The twin suns hung low over the crystal towers of Liara's palace, casting long, golden reflections across the gardens below. The air shimmered with heat, carrying the sweet scent of alien flowers that seemed to glow softly under the fading light. Princess Liara walked carefully along the polished marble corridors, her hands folded in front of her. Today, she had been told, a human warrior had arrived, an outsider from a distant star, a being said to face dangers that would crush even her strongest guards. She had heard stories about humans before, whispered in the palace halls, fearless, strong, unpredictable. Yet, nothing could have prepared her for the moment she would actually see one. Her heart beat faster as she stepped into the grand hall. The doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a figure standing at the center. The human was taller than most of her guards, with broad shoulders and a calm, confident stance. His hair, dark and slightly windswept, framed a face that carried both intensity and a quiet kindness. His eyes, deep and steady, met hers for a moment, and she felt a strange shiver run down her spine. The air around him seemed different, almost heavier with presence. Liara had never felt anything like it. Her attendants whispered among themselves, but Liara hardly noticed. She felt frozen in place, captivated by the human's calm demeanor. When he stepped forward, he moved with a grace that surprised her. It was not alien elegance, there was a raw, natural strength in every motion, a balance between power and control. The closer he came, the more her body betrayed her. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hold them still, and her breathing became shallow. It was strange, confusing, and undeniable. The human stopped a few paces away, bowing his head slightly, as if respecting her status but also acknowledging her as an individual. "Princess Liara," he said in careful words that her translators immediately rendered into her language. "It is an honor to meet you." His voice was steady, deep, and calm, carrying a warmth that made her chest tighten. She wanted to speak, to respond with confidence, but the words tangled in her throat. For the first time, she felt like an ordinary being, like a child standing before someone far greater than she had imagined. Her attendants nudged her gently, whispering reminders of protocol, but Liara could barely focus. She noticed every detail about him, the way his shoulders relaxed when he noticed her hesitation, the way his gaze softened as he looked around the hall, the faint scar above his left eyebrow that hinted at battles fought and survived. He carried a story in his presence, one that she could sense even without words. She realized humans were unlike anyone she had ever known, bold, fearless, and yet quietly respectful. For several long moments, neither of them spoke. Liara could feel the weight of his attention, not demanding, not threatening, but grounding. Her heart pounded in ways she could not explain. She wanted to retreat, to hide behind her royal composure, but something in the human's calm strength made her want to stand taller, to rise to the moment. And yet, every time he took a step closer, a small tremor ran through her body, a mixture of awe, admiration, and a strange, unnameable fear. Finally, she found her voice, soft but steady. "Welcome to my palace," she said. The human nodded once, acknowledging her words, and the tremor in her hands lingered. She realized then that this human was not just a warrior. He was something more, an embodiment of courage and presence that challenged everything she had ever believed about power. And in that realization, Princess Liara understood that her world was about to change, and she would never view strength in the same way again. The next morning, the palace was alive with activity. Soldiers moved swiftly through the corridors, their boots clanging on the marble floors. Princess Liara followed quietly, her hands still trembling slightly from the encounter with the human warrior the day before. Today, her father had arranged a demonstration of the human's skills, a private session in the training grounds. She had expected strength, yes, but what she saw left her breathless. The training arena was vast, circular, and open to the twin suns above. Energy barriers hummed faintly along the edges, ready to contain any accidents. The human warrior stood in the center, his stance relaxed but alert. He held a weapon unlike any Liara had seen, a long, flexible staff that glowed faintly with energy. With a sudden motion, he twirled it, striking invisible targets with deadly precision. The air crackled where the staff moved, and Liara realized that this human's control over force and timing was extraordinary. She leaned forward instinctively, her eyes following every motion. The way he moved seemed both natural and impossible, each step calculated but flowing with elegance. He leapt, spun, and dodged with a speed that made her head whirl. But it was not just his skill that captivated her, it was his presence. Even when he was focused entirely on the exercise, she could feel it, a calm energy radiating from him, like he was aware of everything around him, without panic, without fear. Her attendants whispered among themselves. "He is remarkable," one said. "I have never seen anything like it." Liara nodded slightly, but she could not speak. Her heart raced, not from excitement alone, but from a deeper, stranger feeling she did not yet understand. Every time the human glanced her way, she felt herself shiver. His eyes were steady, almost piercing, but they did not intimidate her. They made her aware of her own strength, her own fears, and the trembling inside her that she could not hide. Then came the test her father had planned. Obstacles emerged from the ground walls, energy blast, moving platforms all designed to challenge even the most skilled fighter. The human warrior faced them without hesitation. He leapt over a collapsing wall, ducked under a swinging energy beam, and deflected blast with precise strikes of his staff. Liara's chest tightened as she watched. Not one movement seemed forced, not one action uncertain. He adapted instantly to every new threat, moving as if danger itself were predictable and powerless against him. At one point, he stumbled slightly on a moving platform, and Liara's heart jumped. But with a small, controlled twist, he regained balance, smiling faintly at his own near mistake. That small human smile made her pulse race in ways she could not explain. How could someone so ordinary in appearance move with such extraordinary skill? How could someone so far from her world command respect simply by existing? Finally, the human stopped at the center of the arena, the energy staff held loosely in one hand. Sweat glistened on his brow, but his eyes sought hers immediately. He bowed slightly, acknowledging her presence. At that moment, Liara felt something stir deep within her, a mix of admiration, curiosity, and a quiet awe. She realized that humans carried not only strength of body but strength of spirit, a courage and presence that could inspire even those born into royalty and privilege. As she left the training grounds, Liara's thoughts spun. Her hands still trembled lightly, though now it was no longer fear. It was something else, a recognition of a power unlike anything she had known, a respect that bordered on reverence. The human warrior had shown her that strength was more than skill. It was the calm mastery of fear, the courage to face the impossible, and the quiet assurance that one could endure anything. And Liara, the princess of a powerful alien world, understood that she had never truly seen strength before, not until she stood near him. That evening, the palace seemed almost dreamlike under the light of the twin moons. Silver shadows stretched across the crystal gardens, and the alien flowers glowed faintly, casting a soft luminescence over the marble paths. Princess Liara moved quietly through the corridors, her mind still full of the human warrior's extraordinary abilities. The tremor in her hands returned as she thought of him, not from fear, but from a strange mix of awe and fascination she could not name. Drawn by a sudden impulse, she left the safety of her quarters and wandered toward the palace gardens. These gardens were forbidden to all but the royal family, a sanctuary of delicate plants and sparkling water features. The air smelled of sweet nectar and ozone, a heady mix that made her senses sharper, more alive. Liara paused at the entrance, catching sight of movement among the glowing flowers. The human warrior was there, alone, walking with a careful, measured pace. Her heart skipped a beat. Why was he here, in a place no outsider should enter? She hid behind a marble pillar, pressing her fingers against her lips to keep herself silent. Even from her small hiding spot, she could see the strength in every line of his body, the way he seemed attuned to his surroundings, alert yet completely calm. She had followed him here without intending to, yet now she could not step back. The garden felt electric, as if it recognized his presence and responded with an almost sentient glow. The human paused near a fountain, the water shimmering like liquid silver under the moons. Liara felt herself breathe more shallowly. Every instinct in her body urged her to stay hidden, yet every emotion drew her closer. Finally, the warrior turned slightly, as if sensing her presence. "Princess Liara," he said softly, without any surprise in his tone. "You need not hide." His voice, calm and steady, made her knees weak. She stepped out slowly, hands trembling, and found herself standing a few paces from him. He did not step back. Instead, his posture was open, welcoming, as if he understood her hesitation without judgment. Liara noticed how different he seemed from any being she had ever known. He carried a strength that was not just physical, but emotional. A quiet confidence that could disarm the most cautious alien heart. I did not mean to intrude," she whispered. Her voice shook slightly, betraying her pride. "You are not intruding," he replied gently. "This place is beautiful, and I am curious, like you." Liara's chest tightened. Curiosity? From a human? He had survived battles and dangers she could barely imagine. Yet he spoke of curiosity with the same ease he used to wield a weapon. She wanted to reach out, to touch the calm certainty in his presence, but she froze, trembling. Something in the way he looked at her made her feel both small and elevated at the same time, like she was witnessing a power beyond the physical. something more profound than anything her palace had taught her to admire. They walked slowly among the glowing flowers, maintaining a careful distance, yet with an unspoken connection that grew with each step. Liara found herself daring to ask questions about the stars, the planets he had visited, and the battles he had fought. His answers were honest, measured, and sometimes laced with a quiet humor that made her laugh despite herself. Every time he came closer to answer, a small shiver ran through her. She realized it was not fear, she was not afraid of him, but awe, admiration, and something deeper, a recognition of courage she had never encountered before. When the moons reached their highest point, he finally stopped near her. The soft glow of the garden reflected off his face, highlighting every line of determination and kindness. Liara understood, in that silent moment, the humans carried a presence that demanded attention, respect, and a strange kind of wonder. And in that realization, she felt her world grow larger, brighter, and infinitely more unpredictable. The peaceful nights of the palace did not last long. Rumors arrived like thunder, whispering of an approaching fleet from a rival planet. Princess Liara's stomach twisted with unease. Her people had always relied on strategy and diplomacy, but she had begun to understand that strength came in forms she had never truly seen, forms that humans embodied naturally. When the council convened, her father, King Veller, spoke with authority, yet even his stern voice could not mask the fear in the room. The human warrior volunteered immediately to lead a squadron of defenders. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the panic around him. Liara watched him as he outlined plans on the holographic table, his movements precise, confident, and decisive. Each instruction he gave carried a weight of experience and courage that she had never observed in anyone else. He spoke to her directly, explaining the strategy in a way that included her, as if he believed she could contribute. Despite her inexperience in war, Liara's pulse quickened as she followed his explanations. She could feel the tremor returning whenever he stepped closer to point at a tactical map or demonstrate a maneuver. The human's presence was magnetic, impossible to ignore. Yet it was not arrogance or threat she felt, it was inspiration, an unspoken challenge to rise beyond her own limits. She noticed the way he moved, how even in conversation his posture was controlled, ready, yet approachable. Her chest tightened, her hands shook slightly, but this time it was mingled with resolve. The palace's defense drills began at first light. Liara insisted on observing up close, despite her attendant's protest. She wanted to see him in action, to understand the courage she had only glimpsed in the garden and the training arena. The human led his squad with unmatched composure, evading energy blast, coordinating with precision, and moving as if he could predict the chaos before it arrived. Every time he glanced her way, Liara felt a warmth, a connection, a recognition that he noticed her presence without distraction. Then came the moment that changed everything. An ambush threatened the palace's eastern wall, enemy drones descending with blinding speed. The human did not hesitate. He sprinted forward, deflecting blast with a metal shield, his movements a blend of raw strength and calculated skill. Liara's heart raced as she saw him face impossible danger without flinching. She wanted to call him back, to warn him, but she stayed frozen, captivated by the fearless determination that defined him. At the peak of the attack, the human turned toward her, his eyes locking with hers across the battlefield. In that instant, she realized that the trembling she felt near him was no longer simple fear, it was awe, admiration, and a deep, unspoken respect. He risked everything to protect her, not because she was a princess, but because he recognized her value as a being, as a mind, as a presence in the universe. That realization shook her more profoundly than any enemy attack ever could. The ambush ended quickly, thanks to the human's leadership. Soldiers cheered, but Liara felt a quieter, more personal shift within herself. She understood now that humans carried a form of courage that transcended skill or weaponry. It was a presence that inspired trust, loyalty, and admiration even in alien hearts. Her hands, still trembling slightly, pressed together as she watched him return, unscathed but commanding. For the first time, she wondered if she could ever measure up to the strength he carried so effortlessly, and if she could, in some way, honor the courage he inspired in her. That night, as the palace recovered from the skirmish, Liara stood alone on her balcony, staring at the stars. She knew the human warrior had changed her world, had changed her understanding of bravery, and had planted a spark she could not ignore. The tremor in her body had become a reminder. Humans were different, extraordinary, and impossible to forget. The day of the main attack arrived with the sky burning red from the twin suns. Alarms blared through the palace, echoing across every corridor and tower. Princess Liara stood at the edge of the command terrace, watching the horizon as enemy ships descended like swarming predators. Her heart pounded fiercely. She could feel the tremor return, not from fear, but from anticipation and awe as she looked toward the human warrior. At the forefront of the palace defense, he moved with a precision that seemed almost unreal. Bullets and energy blasts streaked past him, yet he dodged, parried, and struck with a speed and accuracy that made Liara's breath catch. She had seen him fight before, but never like this, never against a force so relentless, so deadly. His every movement was a dance of courage and strategy, instinct and experience combined. She realized that humans carried a kind of resilience that her own people could only hope to emulate. As he fought, he constantly glanced toward her, as if ensuring she was safe. At one point, a falling piece of debris flew toward the terrace where she stood. Without hesitation, the human dove, catching it midair and tossing it safely aside before she even realized the danger. Liara's chest tightened. She felt a mix of relief, admiration, and something deeper, a recognition of the bravery that humans carried in their very presence. Her hands trembled, but this time it was awe and gratitude, not fear. The enemy pressed closer, a tidal wave of ships and drones threatening to overwhelm the palace defenses. The human warrior did not falter. He shouted orders with clarity, inspiring the defenders with a voice that carried authority without arrogance. Soldiers moved with renewed determination, rallying to his guidance. Liara watched, astonished, as he deflected a volley of plasma with nothing but a small energy shield, then leapt into the fray to protect a squad trapped behind enemy lines. She realized, painfully, that if anyone else had faced this danger, they would have fallen. But humans, she thought, were different. They did not just endure. They confronted the impossible with a combination of instinct, courage, and willpower that made them seem unstoppable. Every time the warrior moved closer to her line of sight, her heart leapt, her body trembling in a strange, electric mixture of admiration and exhilaration. Then came the moment of the greatest threat. An enormous enemy drone broke through the outer defenses, its energy cannon aimed directly at the palace. The human charged without hesitation, dodging blast, weaving through falling debris, and finally striking with a force that shattered the drone in pieces. Liara could not tear her eyes away. His presence, his courage, his willingness to face certain danger to protect others, these things made her feel simultaneously small and inspired. When the battle finally ended, the palace lay scarred, yet the invaders retreated. The human warrior returned, covered in dust and scratches, yet standing tall. Soldiers cheered, but Liara barely noticed the sound. She could only stare at him, the human who had defied impossible odds, who had shown her a courage beyond comprehension, and who had risked everything for her and her people. As he approached her, his eyes met hers. She felt the tremor in her body again, but now it carried pride, respect, and an unspoken gratitude. She understood that humans were extraordinary not only in strength and skill, but in presence, in spirit, and in the quiet courage that radiated from them even in the most terrifying moments. Liara realized she had never truly known bravery until she stood near him, until she witnessed what a human heart could endure and achieve. That night, as the palace recovered, she stood alone once more, staring at the stars. The human warrior had changed not only her understanding of courage, but the very way she felt alive in the universe. Every tremor in her body was a reminder of the extraordinary being she had met, and the extraordinary power of humanity. The palace lay quiet after the battle, its halls echoing with the distant hum of repairs and whispers of relief. Princess Liara walked alone through the upper terraces, the cool night air brushing against her face. Her heart still raced from the chaos of the day, but the tremor she felt now was different. It was no longer fear or awe alone, it was a mix of admiration, gratitude, and a strange, unspoken longing. The human warrior, who had faced impossible danger without flinching, had left an imprint on her that she could not ignore. She found him standing on the edge of the balcony, his silhouette outlined against the shimmering city lights below. He was quiet, but his presence filled the space with an undeniable calm. Liara approached cautiously, her steps hesitant, yet drawn to him as if by some invisible force. He turned slightly, noticing her, and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. The tremor in her hands returned instantly, a reminder of how deeply she felt his presence even at a distance. "You should rest," she said softly, though her voice shook. "You've done more than anyone could ask." He shook his head gently. "I did what needed to be done," he replied. His voice was calm, steady, but there was a warmth in it that reached her heart. "You were there. I had to make sure you were safe." Liara's chest tightened at his words. It was not a boast, not a threat, not even a plea. It was a quiet acknowledgement, simple yet profound. She realized in that moment that he saw her not just as a princess, but as a person worth protecting. The tremor in her body grew, not from fear, but from an overwhelming recognition. Humans possess courage and care in equal measure, a combination she had never encountered in anyone else. She stepped closer, the moonlight casting gentle shadows across his face. I have never met anyone like you, she admitted, barely above a whisper. Her hands shook slightly as they hovered at her sides. Not in skill, not in strength, not in heart. He turned fully to face her, his gaze steady and unwavering. And I have never met anyone like you, he said. His words were quiet, yet each syllable carried weight. You face fear with dignity. You make difficult choices. You inspire even without trying. Liara felt the tremor surge through her again. She wanted to speak, to say more, but the words refused to come. Instead, she simply stood there, letting the silence speak for her. And in that silence, a connection formed, a bond that did not require grand gestures or declarations. It was mutual respect, admiration, and understanding. She realized that the human's bravery was not just in his actions, but in the way he made others, even a princess, feel strong and seen. They stood together for a long moment, the night wind brushing against them, the city quiet below. Liara's trembling hands found a new rhythm, not of weakness, but of awareness and awe. She understood that the human warrior had changed her. He had shown her courage that transcended power, presence that transcended rank, and a humanity that transcended worlds. Finally, she whispered, I respect you. More than I can say. He nodded once, understanding fully without needing further explanation. And I respect you, he replied. You have strength of a different kind, one that matters just as much. Liara felt a warmth in her chest, a calm certainty she had never known. The tremor in her body lingered, but it was no longer a sign of uncertainty. It was recognition of courage, of presence, of connection. In that silent confession, she realized that she had glimpsed something extraordinary, something beyond skill or power, the extraordinary spirit of humanity, and the extraordinary bond it could create between worlds. The palace had begun to heal from the scars of battle. Marble floors gleamed once more, and the gardens bloomed under the twin suns, their glow soft but persistent. Princess Liara walked through the corridors with a new sense of purpose. The tremor in her hands remained, but now it was different, an echo of the awe and respect she felt for the human warrior, who had changed everything. She had learned that strength was more than skill, more than weapons or rank. It was presence, courage, and the quiet power to inspire. The human warrior stood in the central courtyard, overseeing the reconstruction with calm authority. Liara approached him, her steps confident yet careful. Every instinct in her body stirred as he turned to meet her gaze, and she felt the familiar shiver of recognition, the acknowledgement of courage and presence that had defined their connection. From the very beginning, she had come to understand that humans carried something rare, a heart unafraid to act, a will unbroken by danger, and a spirit that could command respect without demanding it. Everything is coming together, he said softly, his voice carrying warmth and calm certainty. Your people are strong. They will recover quickly. Liara nodded, letting her eyes linger on him. It is because of you, she said quietly, because of your courage, your guidance, your presence. The tremor in her hands returned, not from fear, but from awe. She realized that proximity to him always stirred something deep inside, a mixture of admiration, respect, and an undeniable recognition of extraordinary strength. He smiled faintly, a small gesture that seemed to hold the weight of all the battles they had survived together. You would have led them well, even without me, he replied. You carry a strength of your own, one that inspires others. The princess felt a swell of emotion rise in her chest. For so long, she had believed her world's strength came from hierarchy, from titles and power. Now she understood it could come from courage, from bravery, and from connection, human qualities that transcended worlds. She looked around the courtyard, seeing the workers, the soldiers, the citizens, all moving with renewed energy. The warrior's presence had reminded them what it meant to endure, to fight, and to rise above fear. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold, Liara and the human stood side by side, silent but united. Every step he had taken, every choice he had made, had shifted her understanding of the universe. She realized that humans were extraordinary not because they were stronger than aliens, but because they carried courage in a way that inspired even the most regal and powerful beings. The tremor in her hands lingered, but now it was a reminder of connection and respect, not uncertainty. She felt a sense of calm and belonging, as if the universe had opened a door to something larger, brighter, and braver. She knew that her people, guided by this new understanding, would thrive in ways they had never imagined, and she understood that the human warrior was not just a visitor from another world. He was a symbol of what humanity could offer to the stars: courage, resilience, and hope. Finally, Liara spoke, her voice steady and full of quiet conviction. We have survived, we have learned, and we will grow stronger, together. The warrior nodded, meeting her gaze with unwavering steadiness. In that moment, the palace felt alive, not just with rebuilding, but with possibility. Liara realized that a new era had begun not just for her people, but for the bond between their worlds. The human's presence, his courage, and the quiet power he had shown would shape everything that followed. And for the first time, she felt truly fearless, not because she had conquered danger, but because she had glimpsed the extraordinary spirit of humanity, and it would never leave her.